Hi, this is part 2 of the lecture on what is sociology of the Introduction to Sociology, Chapter 1, pages 3 to 17. Alright, let's continue. So we're going to start talking about the development of sociological thinking. Sociology is rooted in questions about social change, social conflict, and social problems brought on by industrialization and urbanization. Early sociologists still continue to influence contemporary sociology. So who are the early theorists? As you can see, I listed them here. Auguste Comte, Karl Marx, Emil Durkheim, and Max Weber. Now, think to yourself, what do they all have in common? I often tell my students that I see them as dead white men because they are all dead, they're all white, and they're all men. We'll come back to this point and why this is important shortly. Now, let's start. Auguste Comte was a French philosopher who coined the term sociology, so he pretty much named the field. And he argued that sociology should be a scientific knowledge that sociology should be based on scientific knowledge that can be used to improve people's lives. Because he argued this field can help us in understanding, predicting, and controlling human behavior. And think about how great that would be, because if we can understand what makes people behave the way they do, maybe we can control their behavior by removing different stimuli and so on. And if we can do that, maybe we can also predict how they will behave in the future. So that's what Comte's what's his significance for sociology? He names the field, and he argues that this field can provide scientific knowledge that can be used to improve human life. Now, the next one is somebody you probably heard a lot about, Karl Marx. Karl Marx had what sociologists call materialist conception of history, which means that he argued that everything we do, all our decisions, are rooted in economy. He argues in his materialist conception of history that the driving force for social change and the source of conflict in society is economics. So he argues that there is a conflict brought on by the exploitation of the poor by the rich under capitalism, and this conflict will create social change. So he divides society into two groups, the capitalists and the workers, or in other words, the rich and the poor. And he argues that there's always conflict between these two groups because the rich don't want to give any power away, they want to stay rich, and the poor revolt because they want to get a little richer. So two things that you should always think about when you think about Marx. Marx will always be about these two things, economy and conflict. He argues again that all our decisions are economical in nature. What we do on the basis of it is because of economy. So whether we buy this or that has to do with money, has to do with economy. Conflict, he argues, is how society changes. He argues that there will always be a conflict between people because some will always want to have more than the others, and the others might not want to give more away. So that's Marx. Now, Max Weber argued with Marx, or it's said that he argues with the ghost of Marx because Marx passes away. And he says to Marx, okay, yes, economy is important, but that's not all. Values and ideas drive social change as well, and they also drive our decisions. Think about this. We not only do things because of economy, but also because of what we believe in, because of our values and ideas. So we might behave in one way or in another, depending on how we see the world and what we believe in. His major contributions are bureaucracy and rationalization. So we'll talk about each of these concepts. Bureaucracy is a type of organization that is marked by a clear hierarchy of authority and the existence of written rules of procedure and staffed by full-time salaried officials. So for example, think about school, hospital, or even the DMV. School is a huge bureaucracy. Remember, you had to probably go from one office to another, right? You go from being a freshman to a sophomore, junior, and a senior, and so on. Rationalization, on the other hand, is this organization of our life, our social, economic, and political lives, according to logic and efficiency. So we do things because they make rational sense to us. So just to give you an example, bureaucracy, here is an example of a company, right? On the top, you have the chief executive officer. Underneath him, we see the finance, accounting, marketing, production, and you see everybody has a role to fulfill. And the power in bureaucracy the person on top, of course, has the most amount of power. The people on the bottom have the least amount of power. Just two things about bureaucracy. Weber argues that bureaucracy is there, it's inevitable, we need it because it creates order. It tells us how we should go about doing certain things. And if you think about it, that's how school worked, right? First you are a sophomore, then when you completed some credits, you become first you are a freshman, then you become a sophomore, then a junior, and then a senior. If we all wanted to be seniors the first day of school, none of us would learn anything. It wouldn't make any sense, right? So bureaucracy in this way organizes our lives. It is also the hardest to destroy because people are easily replaceable. So the company is not going to go under because the chief executive officer quits. They're just going to elect a new one and the company keeps on going. So that's bureaucracy. Rationalization is this idea that we use to do things in our lives in a practical way. So for example, when we vote for people who make sense to us, who say the best things that correspond to how we believe. When we, for example, buy things, we buy things on thinking how much money I have. Can I afford this? Is this something that I need? Or even in dating life, think about this. A lot of people, we might not be super rational about whom we're dating, but when we start thinking about whom we want to have families with, we often pick people that are the best match for us, that we have something in common, that we believe we can make a future with these people. So this is what rationality is all about. All right. The next person we'll talk about is Emil Durkheim, and here's a little picture of him. Emil Durkheim is a person who used scientific principles and methods to study social facts, or what he calls aspects of social life that shape our behavior as individuals. So for example, religion, economy, political systems, norms and values, they all shape how we think about the world, right? In terms of religion, whether we act one way or another, it depends whether we believe in something or not. Economy, whether you buy things or not, it shapes our decisions, right? He also talks about this mechanical versus organic solidarity, and we'll talk about it briefly. But he argues that changes in our society happen due to division of labor, specialization of different tasks. So for example, if you think about it, teacher, right? Not only do we have one teacher today, we have many different teachers of many different subjects, right? He argues, his big thing is, why do societies stay together? Or how, through all these changes, how do societies stay together? And this is what these concepts of mechanical and organic solidarity have to do with. He argues that organic solidarity comes from interdependence of society, different parts, and shared values. But let's break it down. So he breaks down society into two categories, pre-modern and modern societies. So if you think about pre-modern societies, think about those societies pre-industrial revolution, when people live on farms. If you think about it, people are pretty much the same there. I mean, if you lived in this little village in pre-modern world, you probably were a farmer. Your dad was a farmer. Your grandpa was a farmer. You did the same job that they did And your kids are going to do the same jobs you did. Now, we also, because you lived in a small village, you probably had all the people like you. They believed in the same God, and once in a while they met in the temple or in a place where you worshiped that common God. So you had the sameness of religion, sameness of jobs because everybody did the same thing, sameness of religion. So everybody believed in the same thing, this collective consciousness. So Durkheim argues that these societies, these pre-modern societies, stayed together because they shared all these collective values. And he calls that staying together mechanical solidarity. Organic solidarity, he argues, is different. This organic solidarity happens in modern life because if you think about it, think about the world today. Do we all have the same jobs? Absolutely not. We all do different things. So division of labor is much, much bigger in our society, right? We have different tasks. We are specialized in different things. Not only that, do we all believe in the same God? Absolutely not. If you walk around New York City, you see different churches on different corners, right? People believe in different things. Some people don't believe, for example. So how do these societies stay together? Definitely not because of sameness, since all of us are so different. We stay together because we are interdependent on one another. I need you guys as much as you need me. So you need me to teach this course. I need you to be in this classroom in order for this course to run. So when you go shopping, you depend on the supermarkets having the food you need. They depend on you spending money there, and so on. So while in mechanical solidarity, in these pre-modern societies, they stay together because of shared collective values. In modern society, in this organic solidarity, we stay together because we are more interdependent on one another. And then there are the neglected founders. Remember how I told you about the dead white men? Think about this. It's not that women and minorities didn't have their own ideas of how society ran. They did, but their voices were not heard because women and minorities were not seen as important as these white middle-class men. So Harriet Martineau is the first female sociologist, and she argued that if one is to study society as a whole, all aspects have to be studied. So all political, religious, and social institutions have to be looked at. Another thing she brings to the table is this analysis of society that must include all groups found in society, including women, because none of these men before that we just talked about wrote anything about women. And she's the first to turn sociological eye towards issues that had been ignored in the past: marriage, children, domestic and religious life, and even race relations. So that's Harriet. The other neglected founder is Du Bois, or Dubois, depending on how you pronounce it. He's the first African-American father of sociology. He's very famous for his concept of double consciousness, so a way of talking about identity through race relations that are experienced by African-Americans. And his famous quote is that the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. So he traces the problems faced by African Americans to their social and economic standing, tying race and class issues. So just like Harriet brings up the issues of women, Du Bois brings up the issues of race relations, because none of these earlier thinkers thought about race relations. And if you think about it, women and minorities might experience the world a little differently. And he was also one of the founding members of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. All right, so this is it for this week. Next week, we'll continue chapter 1. We will focus on the notion of sociological imagination, so please read that part again. And we will also cover modern theoretical approaches. Till then.